Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another biblical movie review for Biblical Month. And today we are going to be looking at none other than Samson and Delilah. Released in 1949, directed by Cecil B. DeMille, and starring Victor Mature and Hedy Lamarr as the title roles. The story goes, it's about Samson, the Nazarite, who falls in love with a Philistine woman played by Angela Lansbury. Unfortunately, when their so-called wedding goes awry, and he basically destroys the Philistines in that general time in the area, Delilah vows revenge because her father has been killed amongst the Philistines, as well as her sister. So then the story basically is Delilah trying to give Samson over to the Philistines. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't really know too much about the story of Samson and Delilah. I'm pretty sure I've read it, but it's not retained in my mind. So I'm not going to go over saying what's biblical and what's not, because we're going to be here for a long time. But at the same time, I think I might have pointed this out before, but just in case, Hollywood is not going to stay biblically accurate. It never has. It's gotten close, but it's never reached that line where it's like it's fully accurate. So, I'm just going to talk about the movie on its own and I guess why I like it so much. I'm not really sure, honestly, why this one ranks as one of my favorites. It could have been how it's made and the way it looks. It's a late 40s movie, and I love the 40s. I also love the casting. Aside from our two leads, we have George Sanders, who I think is criminally underrated as an actor. I thought he was very attractive during his time. I do know that he played a lot of bad characters. Of course, I grew up watching him in The Jungle Book, but I also loved him in Foreign Correspondent, which is a Hitchcock film, and he also did a sci-fi movie in the 60s where he also played a good guy. Um, so I like him every time he's on screen, and I love his voice. I think he had a very nice voice. Oh, and Rebecca, of course. How can I forget him and Rebecca? Of course, he wasn't a good guy in that one. He was quite the cad. But I like George Sanders. I also want to point out that Faye Holden makes an appearance in this as Samson's mother. And of course, for those who know their classics, know her from the Andy Hardy series. And we also have a young Russ Tablin. I think Tablin, is that how you say his name? He's in this, which he's also well known for West Side Story, I think. I think he was in West Side Story. One thing I do know he was in was he's in Peyton Place, and he was also in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, which I also like that one, and my dad likes that one. So we have a young Russ in this movie too, which is kind of cool. The costumes in this movie are also really, really lovely. I believe they were done by Edith Head, and I absolutely love her costumes. She has spanned many fabulous costumes for many wonderful movies. I believe including the Ten Commandments, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. But I know she designed Grace Kelly's dresses for Hitchcock movies. She's also done many other costumes. She was just a wonder when it came to costumes, and this movie is no exception. The costumes in this are absolutely stunning, especially worn by lovely Hedy Lamarr, who was one of the most beautiful women of the 40s, in my opinion, and it's just lovely. The score here is done by Victor Young, and it's a lovely piece. It's not as bombastic or even memorable as the Ten Commandments done by Elmer Bernstein, but it still holds its own for the film, and I happen to like it. Unfortunately, you cannot get a full score of this film. You have to purchase it along with the it's that movie with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, The Quiet Man, I think. You have to get that one, and the only score to this movie on that album is literally the main title, or suite, if you will, but it's over 20 minutes long, so it's basically the same song they use over and over and over again. But still, it's lovely, and I happen to like it, and I did purchase the album just to get that, because you cannot buy that particular song on its own. So, Victor Young did a great job for this film, I guess, in my opinion. Now, I'm not sure how true this is, but supposedly the casting was not originally going to go to these particular actors at first viewing. Rumor has it that Joan Crawford and Paulette Goddard were somewhat the choice for Delilah. Personally, the idea of Joan Crawford being Delilah is absolutely nuts, in my opinion. But I think Paulette Goddard definitely could have pulled it off. I loved her in The Women, and she would ultimately end up doing a biblical movie called The Sins of Jezebel, which I had seen recently, and it's a pretty decent film. It's free on YouTube, I believe, and I think she would have been great as Delilah. And then supposedly we had Henry Wilcox as Samson, which again, I do not think he would have made a good Samson, like, at all. Personally, I think Victor Mature definitely was the best choice for Samson. I think he had the right mystique, and he's just so charming in the film. And this is coming from someone who is not the biggest fan of this actor, mostly because of stories I've heard, mostly due to Esther Williams' autobiography, when she and him had, I believe, a steamy affair during their one film together. But that's how he was. He was a ladies' man, and I guess that's how he was, or what he did. I don't know. But I think that just kind of threw me off of him. Like, I'm like, okay, all right. But I've seen him in other films, and I will admit, I love him in biblical movies. I think he plays them really nicely because he's always the good guy, and he does an amazing job. And I really love him as Samson here. I especially love it when he prays and how he's like, deliver me, oh God, and he just delivers that so perfectly. Speaking of perfect delivery acting, one of my favorite moments from Hedy Lamarr is also after Samson has been delivered, he's blinded and working as a slave in the hands of the Philistines. And Delilah, at this point, did not know what was going on. She refused to see him. And George Sanders' character is like, well, let's just go down and we'll see him. So at first glance, she didn't realize he was blind, but after closer glance, she sees what had happened, and she starts feeling upset and guilty, and she's like, I didn't want you guys to blind him. You took away his sight. What's wrong with you guys? And that night, she has like a recurring nightmare or something, and then, she wakes up and she's crying, and in a way, she starts praying to God, and then she finally actually says a prayer to God, and then goes to him that night. I think that was probably one of her best acting, in my opinion, as far as the dramatic goes. Hedy Lamarr is another actress I don't see too much of. I have seen her in a few films, most notably the one being Ziegfeld Girl, which stars my favorite, Judy Garland. Other than that, well, I did also love her in Come Live With Me with Jimmy Stewart, too, who is another one of my favorite actors. So, she was gorgeous and stuff, but as an actress, I've never really been drawn to her. Although, funnily enough, she would end up doing a movie with George Sanders. I think that took place like in the 1800s or something, the story. And he was actually a good guy in that one, too, in all honesty. So, there's a little trivia for you that I literally just thought about. all in all, Samson and Delilah is a very, very good movie. And oh, I did want to talk about really, really quick before I end this video. I think okay, so compared to The Sign of the Cross, which I recently just talked about, this movie is nowhere near as risque as that film. This one is almost clean cut, 1940s family friendly, until we get to the very end when Samson goes up to the two pillars and he prays and he goes, "Let me die with my enemies." And God gives him his strength back and he tears down the pillars and he dies with the crowd. Now, we never see Samson die. We actually don't see um, Delilah die either. But we do see her kind of hung back in a corner as she watched Samson die, because basically she's at the point where she's like, I'm in love with you, and I just want to die too because I have nothing left to live for. So as the building crumbles, we're actually seeing people being toppled with rocks and stuff, which for its time, looking at it now, it does look like it could be styrofoam, but for its time, it's definitely really great effects. But there's a lot of people like being stuck under the rocks and going, help me. And I'm not sure if we see blood. I can't remember, but it's pretty gruesome in that way, with everybody crying out and falling and being toppled on. That does get a little graphic. But again, that's for its time. Looking at it now, it's nowhere near as bad as we see nowadays. But anyway, I think that's all I really wanted to talk about with this movie. So like I said, it's definitely a great movie. I highly recommend it. It was free on YouTube for a while, but I guess now they took it down. So unfortunately, you're probably going to have to find it somewhere else. Try ok.ru. I have been going on there lately and finding plenty of free movies. That is actually where I finished Joanne Woodward's filmography from the 50s and 60s just recently. So give that a look if you can. And if you've already seen this movie, let me know in the comments below what you think of it. Do you like this movie? And why do you like it? Or if you don't like it, is there a reason why? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in my next video for next week. Bye! Have a great and wonderful day.